had an opportunity to do a talk at MABA this winter, so I knew I was going to do it, so I took the opportunity to go out and thought it was going to be talking about tillage and soil health. So I thought I'd try something that I saw at the National No-Till Conference, and I will eventually get to it. But appreciate the chance of being here. Mark invited me. I guess I've actually been working in Isabella County, Mount Pleasant, for about 22 years. And you mentioned, I was born and raised on a farm, and I'm actually probably about 7 or 8 miles from, I heard the name Ray Roslin mentioned over there before, from actually where he lives. And my particular farm that I was born and raised on, and I have a small farm myself, we've zone tilled. I guess we call, most of us in the neighborhood call it no-till, but it's really a zone till or a strip till. It's worked fairly well for us for a lot of different reasons. But I quit farming my farm a few years ago. My kids decided they had enough of living with mom and dad, and they graduated and left. So I rent it to my brothers now. So I have a little experience with some of that, but it's really exciting and interesting to see how soils change over the years. And I've been working for the last 3 years with cover crops and conservation tillage under the Great Lakes Cover Crop Initiative. It's really been kind of exciting and interesting as farming has changed. And I think we got a lot of challenges. As farmers, we operate a biological system, and to me, those systems leak. What's the most important thing in this day and age when we look at the Great Lakes? You know, we've got water. We've got something a resource that a lot of parts of the country would just love to have. But we also have a responsibility with that water to keep it clean, because as our food production systems ramp up, we've got a lot of opportunities, but we also have some challenges. And I know the meat program that they talked about is an outstanding opportunity for farmers to get some third-party verification and kind of show the public what they're doing in terms of trying to protect the air and water quality in their communities. I think that's really, really important. But anyway, the Great Lakes Cover Crop Initiative, I think you've probably heard about it. I know Christina has been over here. I'm kind of her counterpart, filling in for her today. But I'm going to talk about cover crops, tillage, and some of those types of things. But our real goal is to increase the adoption of cover crops in the Great Lake Basin. And it's really to protect our ground and surface waters. And there was a question before about can we quantify it. I think the NRCS folks do a really nice job being able to quantify the sedimentation you reduce with the Rule 2 and WEPs and those types of tools, that they can assess and measure just how much sediment is being kept out of our systems by adding covers and protecting our field edges and those types of things. So that's what our goal is. In the last couple of years, we kind of did some surveying, and we think that over the past couple of years, we've probably increased our cover crop acres by about 27,000 acres is what we kind of think that we've done as a part of this project. But it's a combination with Ohio State, Purdue, and MSU, NRCS, a lot of different agencies are working together to try to encourage the use of cover crops, conservation tillages, to protect water and other resources in the community. So there's 3 of us that operate. Christina actually operates in Lake Michigan. I have the Lake Huron watershed. So then we have a gentleman from Ohio State that works in Lake Erie. So there's some real challenges I think that we have, but I think we're in a position in Michigan that we have an opportunity to do some really good things to protect our water. And right now, we don't have an awful lot of regulation. I mean, we've probably all read about the Chesapeake Bay and a lot of those challenges that they've had, and a lot of the regulations that some of the farmers, we always feel like we're over-regulated, but probably compared to some other areas, we're probably not. So I think now we have the opportunity to implement some of these practices to maybe protect ourselves from some of the regulations that we might think are a little bit overstretching for our farms. And some of it's the NEEPs and some of those types of things. I was just reading a report from out of Iowa State. It was mentioned earlier about the Mississippi and the epoxy zones. you know, they have a nutrient management plan that's fairly significant on how they're going to reduce that sedimentation. And along with sedimentation, what's hooked to the sediment? You know, nutrients are hooked to that sediment. So if we reduce our sedimentation, we can reduce our loading. It is managing our field edges. Somebody asked a question about, you know, put a dollar figure on it. I had done work with talked to our drain commission. You know, how's a $300 an acre ditch tax? Is there value to that? You know, we've got some projects in Isabella County that are going to cost some of these guys $300 just to clean out the drainage ditches. So there's values to some of those things that we can talk about. So one of the ways that we can kind of protect our waterways is by adding cover crops and kind of protecting those field edges to keep that sedimentation from getting in. Who's coming to dinner? I know it was talked about earlier. Some of the challenges that we're going to be facing as farmers in the years ahead. Now, we can get different people talk about how much we have to increase. I've heard that we've had to triple our food production. I think this might be a little more accurate. But I think what the really important thing is, we're going to have to do this, again, on the same acres, and we're going to have to do it with less energy and less water. Now, a lot of this increase is going to come by technologies. Mark talked about those seed technologies and those types of things. I think that they're going to play a big role in it. But one of the interesting things is in addition to water, is the energy part of it. There's a no-till, where he's actually a strip tiller, in Clinton County. He farms 1,800 acres, and he has some vertical till, but he does mostly just the plain strip till, sprayer, and harvesting. He has 2.9 gallons of red fuel per acre for last year. So think about, as farmers, do you know how much fuel per acre you're using? And you know, they're not giving fuel away anymore. Most of us expect it to continue to rise. So, you know, can we do it with less water and less energy? Certainly, I think we can. It's just a matter of implementing some of the types of practices. Is the weather what it used to be? I mean, I think maybe some of you have seen this slide. This is actually some potatoes growing in, which I believe is Iceland, which was covered with an ice cap not just too many years ago. So there's challenges with our weather. So how are we going to manage our soils that we prevent some of these extreme events? So this is a picture of Dust Bowl. But when I was a little bit younger, where I live, we've got some potato farms next to us, and Mark talked about having the sands. Well, half of the farm that I grew up on was sand. And in the summertime, in the spring, we would see this. Whether we could see as those potato fields and the sands were open, you'd see those dust. So I remember seeing something like that. It only lasted for half of an afternoon, but nonetheless, it was kind of startling. And then you see the bigger rain events. I mean, we had, how much rain did we get here 2 weeks ago? When we had a bunch over our way. 1.5 inches? So we got 4 inches of rain. And I got some pictures of what it actually did. One of the things that, when we talk about has our weather changed, I know Dr. Andresen, Jeff Andresen, our meteorologist, he gave a talk here earlier this spring. We talked about what our weather pattern. We're actually getting more water in Michigan, but it's all coming at once. It just comes boom. And then we go these big long stretches of dry period. So one of the things I think about as far as my farming bones is how do we manage our soils to make them resilient and resistant to those types of events. You know, when we buy a piece of dirt, first thing we do is we tile it. We want to get the water off in the spring, but yet we want to manage it so when we get that 2 or 3 inches, we can hold it for those dry periods. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do when those rain events come and look like this. Now, someone told me when I showed this picture last time that if these were red tractors, they would not be buried. Just saying. But this is just a picture of a few weeks ago in Isabella County, just to the north and east of the county, after we lost all the rain. But we had about 12 inches of frost. What's interesting is the farmer that you see here, he says, I just love this. He said, every year, he says, I wish I had about 100 acres of this type of ground, because every year after it floods, he says, I get phenomenal crops in that area. And he can thank the folks upriver. So we had 4 inches of rain. And these are the types, I just went out and took some pictures just to show you what it was. This is just a little bit upstream. This is that creek, it's actually the north branch. This is a road. This is a port. See that truck up there? There's a truck that went through. That's over a quarter mile underwater. That is all the residue from the field next to us. So these are the types of events that we're getting in how we manage our soils and see that runoff. This is just a little bit different picture of that. What concerns me though is you see the brown water. When you see the brown water, what are you getting? Of course, this is a conventionally tilled field, and you see a lot of that brown water moving off, all that sedimentation. This is actually a picture I took 2 years ago, and I thought it was kind of interesting because I saw this type. It was after a rain event. It was in the spring of 2012. We had a lot of this water. So what I did is I went out here and I was talking to one of our fertility people. So I went out here and I took soil tests, about probably 10 paces off this, 10 paces on each side, mixed and made 1 sample. And then of course, what's down here after it goes away and across the road? There's a nice drift of topsoil. So I thought, well, you know, I'm real scientific. So I took the soil test at each one. And actually in the drift down here, we had 36 pounds per acre more phosphorus in that test versus what's on the field. So this is just a small little example, but I mean, on a larger scale, that earlier picture I showed in Lake Michigan, you know, when you see that sedimentation go off your fields, look what's going on. And you know, the price of our nutrients nowadays are real challenging, and we continue to go up. So I think we need to figure out how to manage that we don't get this. I show you that picture. Then this is actually a little further upstream. This is on that same north branch. But what I thought was a little interesting and a little bit alarming. Our NRCS in the district has done a lot of work on this watershed. They've had some 319 funds where they put in a lot of structures and did a lot of bank protection and those types of things, and buffers and cattle crossing. So this really looks fairly clean, but look at the difference in color of water here. This is just a little different picture from different sides. So you can see kind of the landscape. This is relatively, I mean, it's a little bit murky, but it's still not like that there. So it's just kind of interesting to see, you know, we still have a lot of those problems. So, you know, if we put covers on top of those soils, even though it was froze, we dam that water, try to keep that water on those fields as best we can. So these are examples just of a couple weeks ago. Now you're going to go back and home and just say those folks over in Isabella County, they don't know a thing about farming. But I think we can see that. But it's a fragile system, you know, that we actually work and operate in. We got our atmosphere. We got just a whole bunch of people, and we got a very thin, fragile layer of soil. And how we manage that's going to be critical. And carbon is critical to the system. It's tremendously critical to the system. In the microorganisms, that handful of soil has more actually microbes than there are people on the earth. In that handful of soil, we have huge numbers of bacteria, actinomycetes, fungi, and all the other types of microbial life in these soils. And we need to think about those and how we manage them, how we feed those systems. It's the carbon that feeds the system. We look at soil tilth. This is really what we want to have. We want to have that good tilth, that good soil structure, and that's what when we talk about soil health and managing towards soil health. That's something we're real interested in having. And soil health really drives our system. The nutrient cycling, a lot of those types of things that we try to achieve. You know, we can't always just pack up and move. We're still in our area. That's probably, I don't know, what's the price of land in this county? 8,000. We had a land sale, and you're going to laugh at us, but most of our ground over our way has been selling for, you know, $35 to $45. Well, just before Christmas, we had a $7,450 land sale that just shocked the neighborhood. It was east of Rosebush. And, that really created some interest It's harder to get land, it's harder to rent land, so I guess the challenges are, like Mark says, is maybe we need to go vertical in how do we improve the land that we have, because we just can't. And we can do some of that thing with a lot of different practices, but many of you have probably seen this, we call it the circle of life, but cover crops can really aid in how we manage our soils and how we improve that water quality. And we originally started using covers for erosion prevention, improving our water quality, but as we continued to use them, we increased our organic matter. And to me, organic matter drives the system. It supports that soil biota. As we, those microbes, we build those populations of fungi, bacteria, we improve our soil fertility, that nutrient cycle. One of the things that I think we're really going to see potential is how we manage disease, some of those nematodes and some of those weeds with our cover crops. Mark mentioned the Palmer amaranth, the glyphosate-resistant mare's tail, and some of those things. They've actually found out west where they've had a lot of success putting cover crops into those systems ahead of or behind some of those resistant weeds, and able to keep those populations suppressed. At KBS, Kellogg Biological Station, Dr. Harwood did a lot of work with improving our soil quality, our soil health, and as we, in Dr. Bird, our nematologist, one of the things that they found and they've been able to prove is if we increase the populations of the good nematodes, it suppresses the harmful nematodes. So it's kind of the idea of the rising tide raises all boats. With disease, if you got healthy soils, productive soils, those plants can resist a lot of the disease pressures that are out there. So there's an awful lot of things that can be accomplished by including covers into your system, and even the conservation tillage. One of the things with the weeds, when we start reducing our till and just till as little as we can, just that couple, we don't bury those weed seeds. They last forever. And if you manage your weeds and reduce that seed bank in your fields, that's also aids in managing your weeds. So we can prevent soil loss, we can cycle nutrients, improve water quality, retain the productivity of that soil with cover crops. Soil quality, it's one of the things that we're starting to talk about, a lot of people are starting to talk about. This is kind of a definition from Dr. Harwood about managing those physical, chemical, and biological characteristics to enhance that soil, improve the productivity and quality, protecting a lot of different types of things. I'm not going to talk about the definitions, but to manage for soil quality, we want to maintain that chemical balance. We rotate, I think crop rotations are really critical. We probably, and it's all market driven, but we've kind of went toward a lot of those monocultures. We need to bring back those diverse systems. How can we add cover crops? When it comes to tillage, less is more. Any way we can add these organic inputs, reduce our traffic. We need to think, and I'm going to go through some of these kind of quick because Mark had some of the similar slides, but I think we've got to think about how the energy flows in our system. When I talked about the system that it's a biological system that kind of leaks. You see the CO2 being shot off in different areas. It all starts with the sun, plants. We got the animals that eat our plants. But it's a system that we have to manage, and it's a system that we have to think about each one of those components of that system if we're going to manage sustainable systems over time. You've already seen this, the soil food web. I think it's real critical to increase our organic matter as we increase those fungi, bacteria populations. One of the things that they find is when we start tilling less, we get those higher fungal populations, as opposed to the more we till, we get higher bacteria. Now, they each have a role, but I think we need to think about that soil food web and how we manage our soils. So we've seen this before, are your soils ready for that 300 bushel corn? I know one of the things I think is kind of interesting because if you think everybody's worried about soils and productivity, last summer, Monsanto had a kind of a focus group, a work group come into St. Louis, and it included some university folks, it included farmers, seed dealers. What were they talking about? They were talking about cover crops. think, in how to improve their health. I think they recognize that they have the ability, you know, have they taken, I guess I asked the question, have they taken their genetics about as far as they can without thinking about what's happening underneath the ground? You know, does the soil have that ability to cycle those nutrients, to provide the water and those types of things to our soils? You know, we can put on our synthetic fertilizers, you know, but I was reading a story, I think it was in Progressive Farmer, about, you know, we use a lot of synthetic fertilizers, we've gone to monocultures, and, you know, some of our soils are just dead, especially in like in Africa and some of these countries. You know, they said that you can put synthetic fertilizers on dead soils like putting an oxygen mask on a mannequin and expect them to come to life. And then, you know, if you think about that, that's kind of funny, I just think about it, but really it's probably not. You know, we have to have, and so I think, you know, some of the companies are thinking about that. I'm working on a project with Wisconsin. There's a couple from Michigan working on with a group in Wisconsin and Nebraska, and it's on soil health. You know who funds it? DuPont. What is DuPont? Pioneer. So I think all those companies are starting to think in those terms of how do we improve our soil quality, that soil health for production over time. Carbon, I say carbon's your friend as a farmer. Take-home message here is this carbon cycle. And the green is when we're adding carbon to the system, the red's where we're losing it. How do we manage? So we decrease the red arrows, increase the green. Same as the nitrogen, same type of system. Carbon is your friend. From a farmer's standpoint, you know, we hear a lot of talk about carbon, but how do we hold that carbon? By no-till, by crop rotation, by cover crops, whatever it is. One of the interesting things about carbon is if we sequestered all the carbon in the atmosphere in the soil, that'd still be only 40% of the soil's holding capacity. This is a slide that, you know, is really kind of alarming to me, and I think it's a real valuable, it's an eye-opener. It's from tillage and the effects of tillage and native monocultures and those types of things. Over the past, and this was done at the University of Minnesota, USDA assisted with it. You see another study out of, I think it's Illinois, had something similar to this. But we've lost 40 to 60% of our organic matter over time. And we see how organic carbon, those things drive our system. But we can change that relatively quickly if we start putting, you know, going back to a little better crop rotation, a little less tillage and those type of things. So what's it worth? One of the mentions is what's our soil organic matter worth? This is slide's a little old because probably any of you guys in here that are buying nitrogen and you could buy it for 50 cents a pound, you'd probably buy it for 3-4 years worth. But this is making some assumptions. What the value of organic matter is. 2 million pounds, the top 6 inches, 1% organic, 20,000. So we kind of break this all down. But this is the number at the end of the day. We've seen this number in other places. What's organic matter worth? Approximately $650 an acre. If you think about just the nutrient value, water holding capacity. What's interesting about water holding capacity is during the hot, dry summer, what's an extra inch of water worth if it's held in your soils? Every percent organic matter holds about an extra acre inch of water. There's some real value to that. So we can improve our organic matter on how we till, growing cover crops, a lot of different types of things like that. These are the benefits. Is our lunch going to be here at 12:30?
It's already 12:30.
I know it. I can see the time, but I just want to know how fast I can go through this a lot quicker. This is a pretty common. One of the things I want to get to is a project that we were doing this summer about getting these cover crops in its aerial seed. Now, one of the challenges, I think, and I've got a survey slide here that shows about one of the challenges, especially farmers in Michigan, mid-Michigan and north, how do we get those things in? Our growing season is too short to get them established before winter. Now, most farmers are pretty creative folks. All you got to do is give them a shop, torch and welder, tell them that they couldn't build something. And I can guarantee you that they're going to have something roll out the next spring. This is a high point where a guy just actually out of Ohio adopted where he goes into standing corn and is able to put it in. The aerial seeding part, I think, is the thing that I really want to emphasize in the project that we actually operated this summer. And it's a project that we actually did through funding with corn and soybean growers. And this is the survey that I mentioned about what cover crops are not in your rotation. Far away, not enough time to get them established after harvest. So one of the things that we really thought, and I still feel very strongly that we're going to be able to put cover crops into our rotations if we can get them there just a little bit earlier. So what we did is we thought the aerial seeding would be that great opportunity to do that. I know they do it in Ohio, in Indiana, they do a lot of it. They apply a lot of their cover crops in the standing corn and beans later in the summer. So this is an opportunity that we thought in Michigan that we could probably do that. If you're paying the check off for the corn and soybeans, you help support this project. But we wanted to evaluate seeding aerially. We wanted to evaluate what time might be the best and what species might be the best. And we have do have a demonstration day so guys could actually get a look at it. So this is where it was done at. I used Al Spray Service. He's near Elsie. We had 2 locations on Thalen Farms, a corn and a soybean. We had soybeans at Densmore's. This is right off 57 going into Ashley, and then Voisinette's right by Langsburg. So we had 4 locations, corn and soybeans, and this is the species that we selected. And we selected these because that's something we thought a lot of people would probably use. The oats and oilseed radish, that's one that a lot of people have used as a benefit. We flew it on at 6 pounds of oilseed radish, 36 pounds of oats. The annual ryegrass crimson clover, that's been a real popular one in the thumb of Michigan, in northern Ohio, Indiana. They used that with a lot of success. Then we used the annual ryegrass by itself, and we used the cereal rye. So our locations and our dates, we didn't go into the soybeans early. One of the things that we thought about is when would be the ideal time to put these in. That's one of the challenges. We're thinking about species and timing. So we knew that we wanted to go one that was really early, that we thought, well, we'll just go early to see what happens. And then one that might be a little early, one that might be just about right, and one that we figured would be quite late. We didn't go with the soybeans that first time because I don't know if it's a practice over here, but we've got a lot of people that will fly wheat in their soybeans to seed wheat. And they usually do it right after Labor Day, there or thereabouts. And if you get the wrong year, and beans get a little late, you're cutting wheat with your cutter bar. That's not anything anybody wants to do. So, and that's one of the things about, I always say, and I talk about cover crops and using them, is one of the biggest things we have to think about is how we put them into our systems without hurting our primary crop. That to me is critical. So anyway, this is what we did. I had the pleasure of the first 3 times, we went out a week afterwards and did stand counts in each one. You see the oilseed radish coming, the oats coming. This was usually 7 to 10 days after the application. We were really impressed with how well it actually established. These are examples of what was after a week, some of our stand counts. Rye did really, really well. Our oats and oilseed radish got off to a really, really good start. Annual ryegrass was kind of hard, but some of us, if you know how small that stuff is when it starts, if some of us old guys didn't have our glasses on, we might have missed a few of those little waters out there. But the annual ryegrass crimson clover, I was fairly impressed with that when we did it. In the soybeans, similar kind of thing. The rye did really well. I mean, we kind of had in one of the soybean fields was solid seed, the other was 30-inch rows too. So that's just to know. Do we lose some in the canopy? Yeah.
Did you do ones later on in the test again after a couple of weeks? Because what's the germination time on those?
We did it. We went into each one after a week after we flew it on. We did the stand counts, but we did a biomass count at the end of the season. Okay. So that'll be coming up.
Okay.
But yeah, we did have some crimson clover growing in some of the crowns. You know, we did lose a little bit. But what was interesting is I think we learned a lot from, or at least I did, because I think we had really good emergence early, because underneath those corn canopies in the middle of August is pretty hot. In the summer it was hot and we had rain, so we felt like where we had a little less residue, we got better seed soil contact, we had better growth, we had more residue. I think we had a little more predation. A lot of like the oats and oilseed radish seeds were kind of chewed up, and that was fairly interesting. So the biomass was pretty disappointing at the end of the day. One of the things that we kind of found out that with our oats, we got really good, it got off to a really good start, but at the end we really didn't have a whole lot left. Annual ryegrass and crimson clover, we still had it there. One of the things I think that happened is there's two things. I think in that standing corn, I think we run out of daylight. We did those, the plants didn't get enough sun. I know in Indiana and Ohio, the folks that fly it on, they always say you have to wait until the corn is senesced up to the ear. And then you have 50% canopy, and you're able to put it on then successfully. So our rye was a little bit better. If you look at the rye corn, the annual ryegrass was a lot better. This is examples, some pictures that we took, the stuff that was seeded early. You can see some of it out there. Some of it looks okay. Some of it, you don't feel quite as good about it as you should. But we kind of think that there's some hope and opportunities. Soybeans was a real disappointment. We had nothing. I mean, we had some decent stand counts early on, but the one particular soybean field, the Thalens, they had like 65 bushel beans, and they were in 7-inch rows. So the canopy, I don't think the covers could just survive that canopy. I just don't think it happened. On Densmore's in the 30-inch row, if you remember, what was it, mid-September, when that, of course, in our area, we were lucky with rain this year. We had really timely rain. We had phenomenal yields. This particular field, about 2 days after we flow it on, we had 6 inches of rain in that field. So I think a lot of our seed was in the ditch. So I think that was one of the issues that we had. We did have a field day where we had an opportunity for people could go out and stand underneath the plane if they so chose, and watch how that seed, how it just distributed into the field. So that worked out really well. We're going to do some biomass samples in the spring, the stuff that didn't winter kill, kind of get the complete data analysis. We think we need to evaluate, we're going to do yield checks on that because we have a GPS in where each one of those strips work. We'll have an opportunity to do yield checks on Phelan. So I think that's going to be an opportunity. This is just a field that I took. I took it last year. It'd be in the fall of 2011. I took it on the way home from the fruit and vegetable show at DeVos. And this is an organic grower, and I took this because he flew rye on. And this is actually pretty good growth. This was taken in December. We had kind of that open wedding, and he has that this year. This is just another look at it. So I think aerially it can be done. I think that's where maybe we'll be, focusing some of our efforts to try to get that in. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to try this. Let's see. These are two soils from. It's just a little bit north and west of Mount Pleasant, and they're two. That's ethical loam, and if you look at them, you can kind of see one. What I did is I went out. The guy that always belly aches about his poor soils, his hard soils. He's a corn and soybean wheat farmer. He chisels. He's got every piece of equipment there is, and he just goes and does what he wants. And they used to be a dairy farm, but he hasn't had manure in years. And so I took it. I just went out in December, early December, because I knew I had to do this talk after the first year. So I went and just got a shovel full, put it in a shoebox, and I went right to the fence row, 20 paces away. Took the side off, took the same shovel full. So you can kind of see which one do you think is from the fence row and which one do you think, there's obviously a color difference. So now I'm going to dump these in to do the slake test to see what kind of holding capacity these particular soils have. it's working like it's supposed to. This is from the tilled field. And it's just interesting to look at the stable aggregates and in those glues that Mark talked about, to see how the difference in those soils, and see how they're breaking apart with those big rain events. So this is, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, this is really worth maybe 984 or something like that. I think when we think about how we manage and how we manage our soils, from cover crops to tillage and those types of things, you know, we got to get back to those more natural systems. But I know that we're going to have to till. I know that there's, you know, certain systems we're going to have to do some. But I think that at the end of the day, we need to figure out how to be this type of dirt versus this. Who would, you know, take your pick. So.
I just want to quickly comment. Someone forwarded me a link to a YouTube video, and it's the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So they have their own little YouTube page, and it shows the difference after a rainstorm between a conventional till and a no-till, and they showed what was actually exiting the farm field going into West Creamer, did different hit, but it was really amazing what the difference
I've got
was.
on my farm, and I never like to talk about my own place, because if you want to learn how to do mistakes, come to my place. But anyway, once I started the zone till, you know, there's parts of my farm that isn't tile, and we had areas that were covered. You know, we'd always have water ponding. About 4 or 5 years after we started, water never stood there anymore. I mean, those wormholes that you see, you know, the roots, the ability for the root channels, once they die, you know, if you don't disturb it, those things continue to stay, and we move that water. We farm, you know, vertically. We go down deeper into the system. It's amazing, because I don't have those pictures with me, but you know, it's just interesting to see. It's really evident to see the difference in the ability of those soils in the spring to hold on to that water and not have it going on.
Just the color of the water.
Oh yeah,
This is what they were showing, you know, pretty much crystal clear versus just chocolate brown.
And you know, I think we're at this time where I think it's a critical juncture for ag, because we've got a lot of cash in the system now. We've had good crop prices, and, you know, things. And I think as we start to you know, we kick the farm bill can down the road, and then and I guess what I wonder is how is Congress going to invest? What's the general public feeling toward ag and toward their responsibility? You know, farms, 20 years ago when I started in this business, farmers said, I want to be treated like a business. And some of my business friends said, no, you don't. Because of a lot of the, you know, the transportation, a lot of those rules and regs that some of those folks have, another coming to the farm.
So what are the different values of these different cover crops that you're planting? Why those specific ones? Were you just looking at biomass, or were you looking at some of the other qualities of them?
We were looking for, when we had we were looking for biomass for one. We were looking for something we could get established as far as soil stabilization, you know, so we use runoff. We had the oilseed radish and oats in, the oilseed radish for some biological tillage, and then we had the crimson and annual rye in, with the crimson with the idea of maybe generating a little nitrogen for the system.
And was that, what were the crops that they were planning on planting the next year? Was it the same crop?
No, they're corn soybean rotation. So each one, the soybeans will have corn, the corn will have soybeans.
Okay. Now, rye, is it both annual ryegrass and cereal rye that have allelopathic properties?
The cereal rye is the one that can have these allelopathic properties on the small seeded weeds. And if you have rye in, you know, the idea is to kill it.
Yeah, before you
10 days before
yeah,
you
exactly.
terminate it. And I think one of the things I always encourage people for the first time, if they're putting covers in, to use. I like oats. It's cheap.
Okay.
Oats is cheap, and you know, you can use the radish oilseed radish in there, you can make that mix. We have a couple of growers that have done that with manure. They put that in after a week. They go in, and I've got a couple slides later on in there someplace, that if he's kind of a conventional tiller, he tills as little as he can, but he gets dairy manure. His wheat fields, he puts dairy manure down, he goes out there with a vertical tillage tool, and they hit it, he broadcasts that bushel of oats and 5 pounds of oilseed radish, and he's got everything grid sampled. So what he does is, he has the agribusiness do it, and one of the hoppers he puts 100 pounds of potash with his seed, and then the other hopper, he variable rates his potash for the next year. And he goes out and spreads it out, just touches it with the variable tillage tool, and he has tremendous biomass.
And so adding that potash helps decrease predation on those?
No, he's just putting it on for the next crop, just based on his soil test. That's just so he eliminates a pass. He's going to go through it anyhow, so it allows him to put that on all in one pass. So, and one of the things that kind of to finish that is he uses the oats and oilseed radishes because most time in winter, because you don't want to have these covers get in the way of early planting or your production system. Some guys like to let the rye get big. I think Mark talked a little bit about carbon nitrogen ratios in the soil. You need to keep those things down, or otherwise you get the nitrogen tie-up. So you want to like that rye, just like the cereal rye, 10 to 12 inches, you need to go take it out.
Yeah.
Because then the carbon nitrogen ratio is at about 25 to 1. Anything below that, you won't get any nitrogen tie-up. So I think that's critical in how you manage. Anyway, I'm way over time. Sometimes I start to talk to me. See if I can outlast the agriculture. Any questions? If you're on to answer them, thank you.